Imagine waking up to find your car smashed with a hammer. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me, and it all started with one very entitled HOA Karen. I had parked my car in what I thought was a perfectly safe spot in the neighborhood, but little did I know, this would lead to the most insane confrontation I've ever had. I was inside my house when I heard a loud bang, followed by a lot of yelling. I rushed outside to see this woman standing next to my car, hammer in hand, looking like she was on a mission. It didn't take long for me to realize this wasn't some random act of vandalism. No, this was personal. What did I do to deserve this? Well, apparently, my car was parked in a spot she didn't approve of, one that, according to her, violated some obscure HOA rule. But here's the twist, she had no idea who I was. And trust me, if she did, things would have gone down much differently. As the situation started to escalate, I had to make a decision. Should I confront her right then and there, or let it play out? What happened next took the whole thing to a whole new level. Stick around to find out how this crazy encounter ended and what the aftermath was like. At that moment, my mind was racing. Who was this woman, and why was she so angry over something as simple as a parking spot? I tried to keep my cool, but the sight of her standing there with a hammer in her hand made it hard to stay calm. She was yelling something about how my car was in the way and how I was disrespecting the community. But I could barely make sense of it all. This wasn't about parking. It felt like it was something deeper. I had only recently moved into the neighborhood, so I wasn't familiar with all the unspoken rules of the HOA yet. I knew they were picky, but I didn't realize how far they would go. As I stood there, trying to figure out what to do next, she started taking swings at my car. The sound of metal hitting metal was enough to make anyone's blood boil. I knew I needed to stop her, but I wasn't sure how to handle this situation without making things worse. But here's the thing, this wasn't some random HOA enforcer. No, this woman was someone who had a history in the neighborhood. People had warned me about her, but I didn't take them seriously at first. They called her the neighborhood watchdog and said she had a reputation for getting involved in everyone's business. Now I was starting to see it firsthand. I wanted to walk up to her and ask what the hell she was doing, but something told me to hold off for a moment. There was more going on here than I could see. As I stood there, frozen in place, I couldn't help but think about the rumors I'd heard about her. The neighborhood watchdog wasn't just a title, it was a role she'd taken on with disturbing enthusiasm. People spoke in hushed tones about her tendency to take matters into her own hands, even when the HOA hadn't asked her to. Some said she was obsessed with rules, others believed she had a personal vendetta against anyone who didn't fit into her idea of what the community should be. I had no idea I was walking right into her crosshairs. My eyes were locked on her as she continued to take swing after swing at my car. It was as if she was channeling all her frustration into each blow, like my car was a symbol of everything she despised about outsiders. I started to feel a little sick to my stomach. This wasn't just about parking, it was about power. She felt entitled to control every little detail in the neighborhood, and now I was her target. What really puzzled me was that, despite all the drama, I hadn't done anything wrong. I had parked in a spot that I thought was legal, and the car had been there for less than an hour. Yet, here I was, standing on my lawn, witnessing this woman destroy something that was mine. But something else was nagging at me. She seemed oddly familiar. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the more I thought about it, the more I was convinced we had crossed paths before. Was she someone I'd met at a neighborhood event? Had I unknowingly upset her in some way? Or was this just a part of her bizarre crusade to enforce her own warped sense of justice? I was starting to feel trapped, like there was no way out of this situation without escalating things. But what if this was more than just an HOA Karen throwing a tantrum? What if there was something deeper going on, something I didn't fully understand? My heart was pounding in my chest as I stood there staring at her. The hammer was raised once again, ready to strike the side of my car with another blow. The sight of her swinging it, her face twisted with rage, made the air around us feel heavy, like something was about to break. I knew I couldn't let her destroy my car, my property, anymore, but I also didn't want to make the situation worse. It felt like one wrong move could send everything spiraling out of control. I tried to take a step forward, but something held me back. Maybe it was the uncertainty of how she'd react, or maybe it was the realization that I was dealing with someone who didn't play by normal rules. The more I thought about it, the more it dawned on me, this wasn't just some angry neighbor. This woman had a plan. She'd have been planning this, or something like it, for a long time. She didn't just want to teach me a lesson about parking. She was making a statement, sending a message that she was in charge here, and I wasn't going to get away with disrespecting her little kingdom. Suddenly, I heard a voice from behind me, sharp and loud. "Hey, what's going on here?" I spun around to see my next-door neighbor Tim standing on his porch. He was someone I hadn't talked to much yet, but the look on his face made it clear he wasn't about to let this go down without intervening. But just as I started to relax, thinking that maybe help had arrived, I saw the expression on Karen's face shift. She wasn't scared, she was calculating. Without warning, she turned toward Tim and yelled, "Stay out of this. This is none of your business." But it wasn't just the words she used, it was the way she said it, with such cold authority, that made the air between us crackle with tension. I looked back at my car, my eyes locked on the damage that was already done, and in that moment, it felt like everything was building toward an explosion, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Would Tim step in? Would Karen lash out again? And what about me? How would I stop her before things got even worse? The silence that followed was suffocating, and I knew that the next few moments were going to define everything. The tension was unbearable. Karen's eyes narrowed as she took a step toward Tim, the hammer still clenched in her hand. My heart was racing, but just when I thought she was about to lash out at him, something even stranger happened. Out of nowhere, a car pulled up to the curb, fast, screeching to a halt just a few feet from where we were standing. I didn't recognize the car at first, but the figure who stepped out of it immediately grabbed my attention. It was another woman, tall, with sharp features and an air of confidence that immediately set her apart from the rest of us. She walked with purpose, heading straight for Karen like she had every right to be there. The whole scene shifted in an instant. Karen froze for a moment, her grip on the hammer loosening, as she looked at this newcomer with a mix of surprise and fear. I glanced at Tim, who was now just as confused as I was. Neither of us had any idea who this new woman was, but the way Karen reacted made it clear that she did. She didn't even try to defend herself when the stranger approached. Instead, she looked almost nervous. That was when the second twist hit me. I realized this wasn't just a random neighbor having a bad day. The woman who just showed up had to be someone with significant power, someone who could make Karen back down. "I've been watching you, Karen," the woman said, her voice icy and cold. "It's time to end this little reign of yours." Karen's face went pale. It was clear she didn't know how to respond. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The air felt electric, and my mind was racing. Who was this woman, and why did she have so much control over Karen? Why had Karen been so terrified of her arrival? I thought I was the only one Karen had in her sights, but this was bigger than I could have imagined. Now, I wasn't just standing in front of a crazy HOA enforcer. I was in the middle of something much darker, something that seemed to be unraveling before my eyes. I wasn't sure what to do next. My car was damaged, my nerves were shot, and now there were two women locked in some power struggle, with me stuck right in the middle of it all. The stakes had just been raised higher than I ever could have imagined. The moment the new woman spoke, everything seemed to freeze in place. The hammer still dangled in Karen's hand, but she wasn't looking at my car anymore. She was staring at the woman who had just appeared like some kind of force of nature. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of whatever was about to happen next. I said, the woman continued, her voice colder than before, "It's time for you to step down." Karen's face twisted in confusion, Then something resembling fear flickered in her eyes. "W, what are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper now. The woman didn't even flinch. "You've been using the HOA for years to push people around, Karen. But that's over now. I know about the falsified complaints, the threats, the manipulation. It all stops today." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, I thought Karen was just some overly strict neighbor with too much power. I hadn't known what I was walking into when I parked my car, but now it was becoming clear. Karen wasn't just a crazy HOA member. She was the one pulling the strings, making life miserable for anyone who didn't fit into her perfect little world. But as I stood there, absorbing everything, I realized that wasn't even the biggest shock of the day. The woman, the one who had just exposed Karen for the manipulator she truly was, wasn't just some random person. She was the new president of the HOA, and to make matters even crazier, she was my aunt. I had no idea she even lived in the neighborhood, let alone had this kind of power. But when Karen saw who she was, her face drained of all color. I could tell Karen was thinking about every shady thing she'd done over the years. She was crumbling right in front of me, and there was nothing she could do about it. The woman, my aunt, didn't waste any more time. She walked straight up to Karen, who was now visibly shaking. "You're done here," she said, with finality in her voice, and with a simple motion, she took the hammer from Karen's hand. Karen didn't protest, she didn't fight back. She just stood there, defeated. But just when I thought the nightmare was over, my aunt turned to me and said, "This isn't over yet, though. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." My heart skipped a beat. Was this some kind of warning? Or was there more I still didn't know about my aunt and the HOA than I could ever have imagined? Just when I thought I had all the answers, one last twist made it clear. Things weren't as simple as they seemed.